Ladies and gentlemen, before a man gives you his heart, he will test something far more important than your beauty, your charm, or your confidence. He will test your soul, not with games, not with manipulation, but with small moments that reveal who you truly are when the mask drops. He's watching how you respond to distance, how you handle honesty, how you treat yourself when no one is clapping. And the truth is this, he's not testing to judge you. He's testing to protect himself from falling for the wrong person. If you've ever wondered why a man pulls back right before things get serious, stay right where you are, because what comes next will show you exactly what he's looking for and why it matters more than you think. Before a man lets his heart attach to someone, there is always a moment, often subtle, often unspoken, where he wants to know not just who you are, but what it feels like to be connected to you. He isn't doing this to play games, and he isn't doing it because he enjoys uncertainty. He's doing it because love, real love, requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust. So before he falls, he instinctively checks whether letting himself fall for you is safe, meaningful, and worth the emotional risk he knows love demands. You'll notice it not in grand gestures, but in tiny moments that reveal his curiosity. He watches how you respond when something doesn't go your way. He pays attention when you're upset, not to judge you, but to understand you. He wants to see if you live your life from a place of reaction or intention, chaos or clarity. Because a man who is contemplating giving his heart wants to be sure he's giving it to someone who won't use it carelessly. One of the first tests is how you handle distance. Not ghosting, not disappearing, just a subtle pullback. A man who is deciding whether he should fall takes a small step back to see whether your world collapses without immediate reassurance. He wants to know whether you cling or whether you breathe, whether you panic or whether you stay grounded in your own worth. He wants to see if your attraction to him is built on confidence or on fear of losing him. Because a man who falls for someone wants to fall for a woman who stands strong, not one who loses herself the moment she feels a shift in energy. The second test is how you handle honesty. At some point, he will tell you something that is uncomfortable, not about you, but about him, something imperfect, something human. Maybe he shares a flaw. Maybe he tells you he's been hurt before. Maybe he admits he's scared of relationships because the last one broke him in ways he's still trying to understand. He isn't testing you to see whether you approve of him. He's testing whether you can hold space for real feelings rather than only polished moments. He wants to see whether your connection can survive truth instead of just chemistry. And then there's the way he tests your independence. He watches how you move through your life. He notices if you have structure, goals, passions, and friendships that exist outside of him. A man who is ready to fall in love doesn't want someone who needs him to fill every emotional void. He wants someone whose life is meaningful with or without him, because that makes choosing him a conscious choice, not a survival mechanism. This test isn't about pushing you away, it's about making sure that your connection is built on desire, not dependence. He may also test how you handle moments of uncertainty. When he doesn't have all the answers about where things are going, he's observing whether you pressure him, demand guarantees, or rush the process. Not because he wants you to wait forever, but because he wants to know if you trust the energy between you without forcing it into a premature label. He pays attention to whether you can enjoy the moments you share without needing to control all future outcomes. A man falling for someone wants to fall for a woman who allows space for things to grow naturally. Another test comes in the form of boundaries, yours, not his. Before a man gives his heart, he wants to see whether you respect yourself enough to walk away from disrespect, ambiguity, or emotional crumbs. He doesn't test this by being disrespectful. He tests it by noticing how you respond to the small things that matter. Do you allow him to cancel plans repeatedly? Do you tolerate lack of clarity because you're afraid to lose him? Do you stay quiet when something bothers you? He watches, not because he wants to manipulate you, but because he wants to understand the standards you hold yourself to. A man falls harder for a woman who shows him, through her actions, that she won't accept less than what she deserves. There is also the test of emotional regulation. Before he lets himself love you, he wants to know whether you can communicate instead of explode, whether you express instead of accuse, whether you listen as well as you speak. He wants to know if conflict with you feels like a battlefield or a conversation, because falling in love means exposing himself to the possibility of misunderstanding, disappointment, or emotional conflict. He wants to be sure that the way you handle difficult moments won't turn love into a war he never intended to fight. A man's deepest test, though, is how you respond to his heart when it peeks through the cracks of his masculinity. There will be a moment, small, fleeting, when he shows vulnerability without planning it. Maybe his voice softens. Maybe he looks at you in a way that reveals more than he says. Maybe he shares a story that shaped him. In that moment, he's not testing you consciously. His heart is watching. He wants to know if you make him feel safe being fully human, not just strong, composed, or impressive. He wants to know if he can be real with you without being diminished. Another subtle test is whether you can inspire him to be better without forcing him to change. He wants to know if your presence elevates him naturally, if he feels more grounded around you, if he makes better decisions because you're in his life, not because you demand it, but because you ignite something in him. A man who is ready to fall doesn't want someone who nags him into becoming more. He wants someone who naturally awakens his desire to rise. He will also test the depth of your compassion, not by creating problems, but by observing how you treat the world around you, how you speak about others, how you respond when someone makes a mistake, how you handle people who can't offer you anything. These moments show him whether your heart is a place he wants to build a life inside. He's not just looking for attraction, he's looking for warmth, humanity, and emotional intelligence. Before a man falls in love, he also tests whether you celebrate his wins without making them about you. He wants to know if you can cheer for him without insecurity, if you can support his dreams without feeling threatened by them, if you can stand beside him, not behind him or in competition with him. This isn't a test of loyalty, it's a test of partnership. And finally, he tests whether your value is rooted in who you are, not what you can offer, whether your kindness is genuine or transactional, whether your affection is or strategic. Whether you are with him because you see his heart, not because you see his potential to validate you. A man ready to fall wants to fall for someone who loves from abundance, not scarcity. These tests are not obstacles, they are windows. They reveal the kind of connection he's stepping into. They show him whether love with you will feel grounding or chaotic, nurturing or draining, peaceful or unpredictable. And while he is testing you, he is also, often without realizing it, testing himself. Because falling in love is not just about evaluating who you are, it's about discovering who he becomes in your presence. He also wants to know whether you can recognize his efforts, even when they're small. Before he lets himself fall, he pays attention to whether you acknowledge the little things he does, the thoughtful text, the slight shift in his schedule to see you, the way he listens when you speak, not because he needs praise, but because he wants to feel that what he gives matters. A man who is deciding whether to let his heart open is deeply attuned to whether his presence in your life brings value or simply fills space. Appreciation fuels connection, and he wants to know if the connection with you is one he can invest in without feeling invisible in it. He watches how you treat time, your own and his. If you are always waiting around for him, dropping everything to be available or organizing your life around his schedule, he may hesitate. Not because he doesn't want the attention, but because he knows that falling in love requires mutual balance, not one person orbiting the other. So he tests whether you respect your commitments, honor your priorities, and guard your time as something precious. A woman who treats her life with intention signals that she will also treat a relationship with intention, and that makes him feel like building something with you is not only possible but meaningful. Then there is the test of emotional pace. If he shares something heartfelt and you immediately dive deeper, faster than he's ready for, he steps back. Not because he's rejecting you, but because he wants to see whether you can match his rhythm rather than sprint past it. He wants a connection that unfolds like breathing, not one that overwhelms him with emotional speed. So he tests whether you can respond with warmth without demanding intensity, whether you can echo his openness without rushing it, whether the connection grows in a way that feels organic rather than pressured. A man will also quietly observe the way you handle uncertainty in him. Not uncertainty about the relationship, but uncertainty within himself. There will be moments when he doubts his path, his purpose, or his ability to be who he wants to be. Before he falls in love, he watches whether you shame that uncertainty, minimize it, or truly hear it. He wants to know if you offer encouragement without trying to fix him, if you hold space without assuming responsibility for his emotional world. He is testing whether you can be present without controlling. Loving someone in their moments of self-doubt requires a delicate balance, and he wants to know if your presence feels like support, not pressure. He also tests how you speak about your past, not because he wants details, but because your relationship with your history tells him what a future with you might feel like. If you talk about your past with bitterness, contempt, or unresolved resentment, he pays attention. Not to judge you, but to understand whether you are carrying pain that becomes a barrier to love. If you can speak about your past with reflection, wisdom, or growth, even if it includes heartbreak, he sees that you've done the emotional work that makes new love possible. He wants to know if you see relationships as lessons, not wounds that still bleed. Another subtle test appears when he gives you glimpses of his dreams, when he tells you what he hopes to build, what he's working toward, or what scares him about his ambitions. He watches your reaction. Do you laugh at his ideas? Do you question their practicality? Do you dismiss them? Or do you see the man behind the dream and offer belief rather than judgment? Before he falls in love, he wants to know if the world he imagines is safe in your hands. If you treat his dreams with respect, he begins to imagine you in them. He also tests how you handle differences, not arguments, differences. Maybe he likes something you don't, or you disagree on a topic, or you come from different experiences. He watches whether you invalidate his perspective or stay curious, whether you listen without immediately preparing a rebuttal, whether disagreement with you feels like an attack or an exploration. Before he falls, he needs to know that conflict doesn't equal chaos, that differences don't mean distance, that connection with you can withstand moments where you don't see the world the same way. A man also pays attention to how you treat your own boundaries. If you say one thing but do another, he notices. If you talk about self-respect but compromise it at the first sign of attraction, he becomes cautious. Not because he's looking for perfection, but because he wants to trust your words. He wants to know that when you say something matters to you, you live by it. This test is not about catching you doing something wrong. It's about understanding whether you know how to protect your own heart. Because a man falls deeper for a woman who also knows how to protect herself. There is another test that many people overlook, the test of silence. He watches how you handle the quiet moments, the times when neither of you has anything profound to say, when the energy is still, when the conversation dips. Do you panic and fill the silence with noise? Do you assume something is wrong? Or can you rest in the presence of another human being without needing constant stimulation? A man falling in love wants to know if peace is possible with you, not just passion. Anyone can share excitement. Not everyone can share silence comfortably. He will also test your consistency, not perfection, not flawless behavior, but consistency. If you are warm one day and detached the next, if your interest fluctuates wildly, if your presence feels unpredictable, he will hesitate. This is not a test you pass by being available at all times. It's a test you pass by being emotionally stable, reliable in your tone, and authentic in your intentions. He wants to know that the person he sees on day 1 is not a mask that disappears on day 20. Consistency signals emotional safety, and safety is the foundation of love. Before he falls, he will also test whether you notice his efforts without needing to be reminded. He wants to know if you see him, the way he shows up, the things he remembers, the small ways he tries to make you smile. Recognition is not about applause, it's about awareness. If you see him clearly, he starts to imagine that you might also see the parts of him he hides from the world. Another test comes in moments when you are the one who needs support. He watches whether you know how to communicate your needs without blaming him, attacking him, or shutting down. He wants to see if you can let him in, if you allow yourself to be vulnerable without expecting him to solve everything. Because a man who is ready to fall wants a partner, not a parent or a savior. He wants to know that partnership with you is reciprocal, not one-sided. He will also test your emotional generosity, not by asking for grand gestures, but by noticing how you move through the world. Are you kind? Do you give without keeping score? Do you treat others with empathy? A man who is contemplating falling in love wants to know whether your heart expands from abundance, not obligation. Emotional generosity is not measured by what you give him. It's measured by how you treat others when there's no reward. He may even test how you handle moments when he can't give you what you want right away. Maybe he needs time, space, or clarity. Maybe he's juggling responsibilities. He watches whether you take it personally or whether you give him room to breathe. Not because he wants to take advantage of your patience, but because he wants to know if you understand that love is a balance of closeness and autonomy. He wants to feel like he can be human with you, imperfect, overwhelmed, or uncertain without losing your respect. Another test comes in how you respond to compliments, affection, or appreciation. If you deflect everything he gives you, brush off his words, or downplay your value, he may retreat. Not because he loses interest, but because he wants a woman whose heart is open enough to receive love when he offers it. He wants to know that his affection won't fall into a place that cannot hold it. One of the deepest tests is whether you bring peace to his life or chaos. He observes how he feels after spending time with you. Is he drained or energized, grounded or anxious, inspired or uncertain? Before he falls, he wants to understand not just who you are, but who he becomes around you. Because love doesn't transform you into someone new. It amplifies the parts that already exist. He wants to know if those parts feel better, stronger, and more alive in your presence. And finally, he tests whether the connection with you feels like alignment, not effort, not effortlessness. Every relationship takes work, but a natural flow. How that doesn't require forcing, proving, or constant recalibration. He's testing whether your presence feels like something he can grow into, not something he has to shrink himself to fit inside. Because before he falls in love, a man wants to know that falling isn't losing himself. It's becoming more of who he was always meant to be. He also tests how you respond when his imperfections become visible, not in dramatic ways, but in the quiet moments where his guard naturally drops. Maybe he forgets something small, arrives a little later than planned, or gets distracted because his mind is weighed down with something he hasn't shared yet. He's not testing whether you tolerate disrespect. He's testing whether you understand the humanity behind the moments when he's not at his best. Before he lets himself fall, he wants to know if your expectations allow room for him to be real, not flawless. He wants to feel that he can grow with you, not perform for you. He pays attention to the energy you bring into his life. Do you walk into his space with tension, suspicion, or emotional chaos? Or do you bring warmth, clarity, and calm? A man deciding whether to give his heart looks at how he feels around you when nothing grand is happening. In everyday moments, sharing a meal, sitting in the car, walking together, he notices the subtle shifts inside him. If he feels like he can exhale around you, he sees the possibility of something deeper. If he feels constantly evaluated or guarded, no amount of attraction can override the emotional alarm bells. He wants to know if being close to you feels like alignment rather than resistance. He also wants to understand how you handle your own standards when things get emotionally charged. When feelings deepen, some people abandon their principles because they're afraid to lose the connection. So he tests whether you remain true to what matters to you even when you care about him. If you compromise your boundaries quickly, he takes note, not because he's trying to catch you, but because he wants someone who honors herself even in moments of vulnerability. Strength with softness is magnetic to him, and before he falls, he tests whether you can embody both. He observes how you deal with life beyond romance. When challenges arise, family stress, work frustration, unexpected obstacles, he watches whether you crumble or rise. Not because he expects perfection, but because he wants to know if you have resilience. A man who is thinking about real love wants a partner who can navigate life with emotional maturity, someone who can face storms without letting them destroy the connection. He wants to see whether your strength inspires him or intimidates him, whether your composure stabilizes the bond or shatters under pressure. Another test comes in how you treat his time alone. At some point, he will want space, not as a rejection, but as a natural need. He watches whether you panic, assume the worst, or create stories that don't exist. He wants to know if you can trust the connection without constant reassurance. Space is not a threat in a healthy bond, it's a breath. And before he falls, he tests whether you understand that space doesn't reduce closeness, it strengthens it. If you can give him room without fear, he begins to see you as someone he can build longevity with. He also observes how you handle attention from others, not because he's jealous, but because it tells him about your values. If admiration from strangers excites you more than genuine connection, he steps back. If you need constant external validation to feel grounded, he becomes cautious. But if you enjoy attention without letting it sway your loyalty or self-worth, he sees emotional maturity. Before he falls, he wants to feel confident that your company. Commitment, when you choose it, is intentional, not influenced by fleeting moments or temporary distractions. There will be moments when he reveals something emotionally significant, even unintentionally. Maybe he opens up about a childhood experience, a past heartbreak, or an insecurity he rarely admits out loud. In those moments, he watches your reaction closely. Do you minimize it? Do you weaponize it? Do you change the subject because vulnerability makes you uncomfortable? Or do you listen with depth, presence, and compassion? Before he falls, he tests whether your heart can hold his in its imperfections, not just in its strengths. Vulnerability is a door he only opens when he senses emotional safety on the other side. He also tests how you communicate your needs. He wants to know if you can express what you feel without making him the villain. If you say, "This hurt me, and here's why," instead of "you always do this," he notices. If you use emotional honesty instead of emotional punishment, he sees you differently. Many people resort to blame when they feel insecure, but before he lets himself fall, he wants to see if you can handle discomfort with maturity. He wants to fall for someone who communicates to connect, not to dominate or wound. Another test appears in how you respond to the pace of the relationship. If he takes a small step forward and you try to sprint, he pulls back. He's not afraid of commitment. He's afraid of losing the natural rhythm that builds trust. Before he falls, he tests whether you're in tune with the flow between you, whether you can match his energy without forcing or rushing. When he feels that you can let the connection unfold instead of trying to accelerate it, he relaxes into the bond more deeply. He may also introduce you to parts of his world slowly, his friends, his hobbies, his routines. He watches not whether you love everything he loves, but whether you're open to understanding what matters to him. If you dismiss his interests as unimportant or judge his circle, he pulls back. But if you show curiosity and respect, even when something isn't naturally your taste, he sees someone who could blend into his life without erasing your individuality. Before he falls, he tests whether your worlds can coexist without forcing either of you to shrink. He also pays attention to how you handle opportunities for jealousy, not the dramatic kind, the everyday moments. Maybe a woman compliments him. Maybe he interacts politely with someone else. He watches whether you trust him enough to remain composed. Jealousy rooted in fear tells him the connection may become volatile, but confidence rooted in self-worth tells him the relationship can grow peacefully. Before he falls, he tests whether your security comes from within or from constant reassurance. He quietly observes the way you navigate conflict. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about whether you attack or collaborate, whether you listen or defend, whether you hold on to grudges or pursue resolution. He wants to see if disagreements with you lead to growth or destruction. Love requires two people who can disagree without losing respect. Before he falls, he tests whether conflict with you feels like a storm or a solution. He watches whether you take accountability when you're wrong. Not because he wants apologies on demand, but because accountability signals emotional maturity. If you can say, "You're right, I shouldn't have done that," he sees someone with emotional intelligence. If you deflect, blame, or twist the situation to avoid owning your part, he becomes cautious. Accountability builds trust, and trust is the foundation of love. Before he falls, he needs to know that both of you can repair instead of repeat dysfunction. Another test lies in how you handle your own ambitions. He wants to know if you have dreams outside of him, if your identity is built on purpose rather than proximity to a relationship. A man who is ready to fall wants someone he can grow alongside, not someone who abandons her path to join his. Before he falls, he tests whether your goals give you life, whether your passions fuel your spirit, whether you see yourself as someone with a destiny independent of romance. That independence makes love deeper, not weaker. He also notices whether you know how to celebrate without needing a reason. Joy is a language he pays attention to. How you find excitement in small wins, beauty in ordinary days, laughter in random moments. He wants to know if life with you feels expansive. Before he falls, he tests whether your energy brings lightness or heaviness to his world. He tests how you handle differences in emotional speed. Maybe he open, sup slower, maybe you fall faster, maybe your communication styles differ. He watches whether you adapt with patience or become frustrated. He wants to know if you can meet him where he is without demanding he change instantly. Growth takes time, and before he falls, he tests whether you can hold space for that time. And finally, he tests whether the connection between you feels like partnership rather than possession. Whether you support each other without losing yourselves. Whether love with you would feel like expansion rather than confinement. Before he falls in love, he tests not to judge you, but to understand you, not to challenge you, but to feel safe with you, not to manipulate, but to see if his heart would thrive in your hands.